Morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishna Kesubos, Parak Aleph, chapter 11, Mishna Beis, Mishna 2. All right, so now, an introduction. The previous Mishnah taught that a widow is supported from the property her husband left to his heirs. This is accomplished by her selling the property and using the money from the sale to buy food. That's how it's done. Similarly, when a woman collects her ksuba payment, she sells her husband's property and keeps the money. So it's interesting. They don't necessarily go over and hand her money. Basically, she takes the property and she sells it. Our Mishnah discusses whether a widow needs the court's permission before selling the heir's property, or whether she may go ahead and sell it on her own. That's the discussion of the Mishnah. Okay, I don't know why. I'm sure if they wanted to hand her the money and she would agree with it, fine. But basically, if they're not cooperating, I'm just wondering, like this whole the heirs. I'm just wondering out loud, this whole idea about how she gets paid, how she gets supported. I'm assuming when it says that what she does is she takes the property and sells it, it's talking about a situation where they're kind of not doing anything about it, and she has to help herself, and she therefore she can sell the property. I'm just thinking out loud that that's the situation here. Now, at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about she's selling the property of the husband's estate either to support herself or to get payment of her ksuba. So the Mishnah reads, Almana, a widow, bein min erisin, bein min anasuin, whether she became a widow during erisin or whether she became a widow during marriage. As we know, erisin is the step before nisuin. Erisin, she is married to this man, but they're not fully married. Nisuin, which means going to the chuppah, is what completes the marriage. So if we're talking about a widow, and she was a widow, whether she was widowed during erisin or she was widowed during nisuin, meaning when she was fully married, she can sell without permission of the basin, without the permission of the rabbinical court. Now, it's important to point out that in the case the almana being discussed here, talking about whether she is an almana from the stage of erisin or from the stage of nisuin, it's important to point out that if she is a widow from erisin, right? So why is she selling the property from the estate? Not to be supported, because an arusa isn't supported by her husband. The obligation of support only starts after nisuin, after being completely married. But at the point of erisin, he's not obligated to support her. So neither are his heirs. So in the case of the widow from erisin, she's coming to collect her ksuba, because the author of this Mishnah, the Tana of this Mishnah, holds that an arusa gets a ksuba. Okay, if we're talking about a widow from the Suin, then there's two options by her. She could be selling the property in order to get supported, because her ksuba states that after he dies, she is supported from his estate by his heirs. And if need be, she's going to sell the property to be able to have that support. It could also be that she's coming to collect her ksuba too. It could be that way too. She's coming to collect her ksuba, and when she collects her ksuba, there's no more support, but that's what she's coming to do. She's coming to collect her ksuba. So either way, according to the first opinion of the Mishnah, she does not need the permission of the Beis Din to do so. Whether she's the widow from the erisin, the widow from the nisuin, whatever it is that they are selling the property for, the first opinion of the Mishnah holds she does not need the permission of the Beis Din to do so. However, the Bartenura points out, and I'll read here from the notes how they bring it down. Nevertheless, 3 people who are familiar with the cost of the property must oversee the sale to ensure that she is getting a fair price. So these 3 people are not a Beis Din per se. They are people who are familiar with the cost of the property and will make sure that she's getting a fair price. And it's 3 of them that we do. That's the halacha. 3 people have to be involved in that. But they're not a Beis Din. They are just ensuring to make sure that everything that she gets a fair price for the property that she's selling.
So if there's not a base, then what are they?
They're just a group of people who understand the value of the property and will make sure that things go fairly. Now, Reb Shimon Oimer, Reb Shimon says, he argues, he says like this, Minan Isuin. Now, before we go on, the reason why the Tanakama says that she doesn't need permission of the Beis Din is, as they explain here, because her husband would not have wanted her to suffer the embarrassment of appearing in court. It's not comfortable for a woman to appear in a Beis Din. And therefore, according to the Tanakama, the assumption is that the husband would not want her to have to go through that, have to go through Beis Din, and therefore we say that she can go ahead and sell the property without permission of Beis Din, but she needs these people who know the value of the property. Reb Shimon says, Minan Nesuin, if we're talking about a widow from the Suin, she can sell without going to Beis Din. Mina Erisin, but if we're talking about a widow from Erisin, loy simkar ela bebeis din. She cannot sell unless she has the permission of the Beis Din. Meaning, Beis Din has to get involved in her going as far as to sell the properties. Mipnei she'ela mezainis, because a widow from Erisin doesn't get support. V'chol she'ela mezainis, and any woman who doesn't get support, loy simkar ela bebeis din, cannot sell unless she goes with the permission of the Beis Din. Now, the issue, according to Rabbi Shimon, is like this. If we're talking about a widow from the Suin, then we're talking about the possibility that she's selling a property to be supported. So, therefore, if that's what she's doing, if she's selling the property to be supported, then we're not going to make her go through Beis Din. Because until Beis Din hears her case, what's she going to do? She needs support. So therefore, in order not to delay her need for support, we say she doesn't need to go through the Beis Din. But if you're talking about the almana from the Erisin, then she doesn't get support. The only reason she's doing this is to get her ksuba. Okay, get your ksuba. You'll have to wait a little bit. You'll have to go through Beis Din and wait. So according to Reb Shimon, it's not really so much about what kind of a widow she is. Is she a widow from Erisin? Is she a widow from the Suin? Because in essence, let's say she's a widow from the Suin, and she's selling because she wants to get her ksuba payment. She'd also have to go through Beis Din because there's no rush. So Reb Shimon's point, and that's his elaboration when he says, if you don't get food, then you have to go through Beis Din. Because if you're selling in order to support yourself, then we don't delay your ability to support yourself. But if it's only a question of collecting the ksuba, which in the case of the widow from the Erisin, that's the only option by her. If we're talking about a widow from the Suin, that could be a possible option by her. But if that's what she's doing it to get her ksuba, then she has to go through Beis Din because there's no rush to get paid to get her ksuba payment. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.